Well, howdy, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee Larson, and joining me from Canada, the Toronto area, is Amanda Otterman. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Folks, y'all have to know Amanda Otterman. Online, she's known as the Meno health nurse or the Meno.
Meno, like
Meno,
as a
that's how I've been saying it in my head, but she's a Meno
yeah,
health
yeah,
nurse
yeah.
focusing on menopause. She's a registered nurse, been doing nursing for a minute, but now is really focused on sharing her knowledge, her wisdom, and experience with menopause, while also doing personal fitness. Which, thank you so much for tying that in that specific niche. And you're also writing a book. We have so I'm so excited. Y'all, like, for like the dummies, like
Dummy,
the
menopause
dummies
for
series,
dummies. Yes,
menopause for dummies.
yes.
Congratulations, that's
Thank
huge.
you. And that should be coming out end of January next year. January 2027 is the
Congratulations.
goal date. So still in the early phases of writing, but yeah, it's done deal. It's coming.
We are going to talk about that because that is menopause for dummies. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
put that in
it's needed,
every
right?
every household, actually.
Yes, for sure.
Well, talk about how you went from, nursing, working in nursing and healthcare to this role of sharing your message about menopause. Um,
Mhm.
Talk about that journey.
It's a little convoluted, but I'll try and like make it so that you can follow. So really my journey sort of started 13 years ago. I had a condition of my uterus called adenomyosis. For those of you who don't know that, it's the ugly cousin to endometriosis. But it stays in the uterus, and what happens is that endometrial lining grows into the uterine muscle. Um, it can happen for many reasons. Mine suspectedly happened because I had C sections with my babies. And that endometrial lining gets invasive and it goes into the muscle. And then with every cycle, it basically does what it does. It grows and it tries to shed, but it's doing it in the uterine muscle. So it's extremely painful. It's, lots of heavy bleeding for up to 2 weeks sometimes for me. I was becoming really anemic, but the pain is what would take me out every month. It was unbearable. And even with like localized progesterone treatment, like via IUD and whatever, it never responded to it. So I ended up with a hysterectomy at 33 years old. During that process, I really wasn't given a whole lot of information as to what could happen with my body, what to expect. All I know is that I woke up out of surgery feeling very different. They did manage to save my ovaries, but they took the uterus, the cervix, and the fallopian tubes. And if you know the anatomy, the fallopian tubes are sort of the branch of the ovaries that the egg travels through and all of that. So they took everything but the ovaries. And what we know now is that even though ovaries can be spared with a partial hysterectomy, and that the expectation is you would continue to make your hormones, for some women, they experience early menopause. And I know right after I had my surgery, everything in my pelvis felt different. Everything
Mm.
from, you know, that, the vagina becoming extremely dry, increased of urinary tract infections started. I had bladder spasms. I had urinary urgency. It was a real gong show. And on top of that, I started to have some mood symptoms as well, sleep issues. And I actually ended up with really severe depression afterwards, which we all know now are sort of these earlier symptoms of perimenopause. So for me, ovarian failure started to happen almost immediately, and progressively got worse throughout my 30s. I couldn't get any help. My doctor was basically like, well, yeah, you could probably go through natural menopause a little earlier, but you shouldn't. It was kind of brushed off, and dismissed, even though I was having all these other symptoms. I had antidepressants thrown at me. Um, and with the depression and stuff, I ended up actually like going off work for a few months. I gained a ton of weight. I was probably at my heaviest about 320, 330 pounds, and just a complete hot mess. I even went to a naturopath, and the naturopathic doctor didn't really have any understanding of what was happening with my body. Um, for 2 years, I really struggled. And then that's when I decided I needed to do something, or something was going to happen to me. So I decided that I, needed to work out and exercise and just kind of change my lifestyle completely to try and combat whatever I was feeling and whatever was happening in my body, and try to heal my body in that regard. So I went from 330-ish pounds down to about 170,
Wow.
in about a year and a half time. And I did that with just changing my nutrition and adding strength training and, regular movement, stress reduction, all those wellness things, into my lifestyle. And that's sort of where my love for fitness and working out and self-care and all of that started. And at the time I was still working frontline nursing. um, then as I started to get into my early 40s, late 30s, early 40s, the symptoms of perimenopause really started to kick in. um, you know the sleep disruption was incredible. The fatigue. I really started to notice that I wasn't getting through my workouts anymore. That
Mm,
exercise intolerance is what they call it. And then the weight gain. And I kept seeing maybe it was like that COVID period where we all locked up and like everyone was drinking wine every night and takeout. But I'm like, well, maybe that did contribute to some of it. But I mean, like, it was like, but it was so rapid because I didn't really change a whole lot of what was going on like around me.
right.
So I still ate fairly well. I still tried to get workouts in, but it just progressively got worse, after like age 42. And that and it was also the COVID period where I started to burn out clinically, right? As a nurse, everybody knows the medical community like was just taxed during that time, and I needed to walk away. And I'm like, I really want to kind of go into like the fitness space and, see what that can do for me. So I did a bit of a job shift. Um, Took a nursing position like in a private industry, but at the same time, I went and did my certified personal training, just to see where it goes. So I became a fitness trainer and a personal trainer. I work at a fantastic like boutique gym and like have one-to-one clients. And while I was doing this, my own health started to kind of like shift again with perimenopause, although I wasn't really sure if it was related to that. But now I look back, I'm like, yes, it is. Um, but I realized a lot of the clientele that I was working with started to talk about some of the things that they're going through as far as like some menopause symptoms and like, oh, the hot flashes and this and that and the weight gain, and they don't know where it's coming from and all of the things. And I started to kind of poke around and see what kind of, things I could find out about menopause and how it affects us, and what's really going on with our bodies in our 40s. And I had seen a few things online about people talking about perimenopause and all of that. And I'm like, I just kind of want to look into it because I think it was the early 2020s is when it really kind of 2020 is kind of when it really started to surface even online, a little bit about menopause. So I dove in and started reading and looking at some research and the websites, and I'm like, oh wow, this is a real thing. And then started to like put the pieces together for me, and I'm like, okay, like this is what I've been living for the last 10 years. And like, and I'm like, there's got to be a way to like support my clients better. So really it came from a place of wanting to just have the information to support my clients. And I found a awesome menopause specialist certification program that actually was designed for medical professionals who also may be working in the fitness space or in a wellness space, and the two came together so nicely. Um, so I took that, got my certification, and then ever since then, it was like it took off from there. So I started to use that information with my clients. It started to kind of get out a little bit. I started to be more present online with it. And then all of a sudden, I have health teams in my region calling me, hey, do you mind doing like a little workshop on perimenopause? And then I did one, and then
Wow.
it turned into three, and then it turned into 10, and then it turned into, can you do virtuals? And like now it's like exploded. And, like my own community is like, yeah, we need you to, like, they're booking in workshops, and then they're telling their other service providers, hey, we have someone here that does these. So now I'm doing workshops for the Toronto area, which is huge. So it just kind of exploded in the last, I'd say, little over a year and a half, where people are really craving that education. So that's sort of where mental health nurse came in and
Yeah.
became, was born. And it really stemmed from just people wanting that education and wanting, the information so that they know what's happening with their body, so that they can go to their doctors and talk to their doctors about it. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, most women are still getting pretty dismissed by their healthcare
Yes.
practitioners, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, that's sort of in a nutshell where it all began.
Well, and
We
I
never
mean, like you said
met.
from the very start,
Yeah,
you didn't know what you were getting into.
no.
Like, and
And I don't know
I mean,
about
that was
you, but my mom
significant.
never talked to me about menopause.
No, I mean, well, my mom does menopause now, but like, yeah, the schools don't, you don't know about menopause. That's just not a thing.
Never talked about
And,
it in nursing school. Not nothing.
and I mean, so many, almost all women will go through that and have no idea what's coming. And the thing about hormones, as we know, I mean, that's what changes us. Like, I mean, those are fundamentally our personality. I mean, it can change everything. Getting having the right balance or having them imbalanced, and um, so can you? I want to acknowledge that the pain you went through, the loneliness. I can uh I see how that drives you to wanting to educate other women, because I mean, that sounds excruciatingly painful, like you said, to have the surgery, to go through what you did, and then really not feel like you had a lot of support or knowledge going into it.
Mm-mm.
Um, have you heard, since sharing your journey? I know that you're getting these professional calls, you're getting folks, like clinics or even podcasters like me who want to hear from you. Are you hearing similar stories as you've been sharing your message? And what are those like?
100%. I have to say, every time I do either a virtual workshop or I'm doing an in-person workshop, there's got to be at least two or three women who raise their hands and said, I've had a hysterectomy and I've been feeling this, and I had no idea that this is what it was. Even though they kept their ovaries, right? We know that hysterectomies, if they remove the ovaries, yes, you're immediately in menopause. Most of the time they're offered HRT, and that's the education they get. But it's these women who have kept their ovaries but have had everything else removed, are the ones that are still slipping through the cracks because the notion is, well, we've left your ovaries, you should go through menopause, naturally, still around this around, age 52 as expected. But now we're starting to understand that when you remove the large uterine organ and the fallopian tubes and cervix, you're disrupting the blood supply to the ovaries, right? It all lives together in the pelvis. So, how do you not disrupt the blood supply going to the ovary by removing all of that stuff, all that cauterization, all of the scar tissue that forms and stuff? How are you not disrupting things down there? So, it makes a lot of sense that, yeah, that we do experience symptoms sometimes right away, sometimes maybe give it, a couple of years and you start to experience some symptoms, but at the end of the day, it's still a lot earlier than expected if you're in your 30s and 40s and you have a partial hysterectomy, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I have noticed, I know this isn't directly your specialty, but that how naming medical conditions is huge for research. It's huge for funding. It's also huge for asking the right questions in research, getting the right treatment. And we saw this past week or two with the PCOS being renamed. Can you
Yes.
talk about what its renaming is and what that means?
Yeah. So the renaming now is PMOS. Uh, Previously it was polycystic ovarian um, syndrome. Now it's polyovarian metabolic, um, so metabolic ovarian syndrome. So um, it it really does make a big difference on how we view that condition now. Um, because we knew that women when it was previously labeled PCOS, we knew that women were having systemic issues with it. So the name polycystic ovarian syndrome makes it sound like it's a condition that's just isolated to the ovaries and the reproductive system. But when you really look at how it affects the woman, we knew that all of these androgens running around in her body at higher levels than they're supposed to was causing facial hair. We knew it was causing voice deepening. We knew it was causing insulin resistance. We knew it was causing, uncontrollable weight gain or, resistance to losing weight. We knew that women with severe PCOS, had even like a different type of body shape, right? They had more of an upper body, metabolic syndrome type body shape. We knew that they were more susceptible to cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes because of this hormone imbalance. So now with that new name being polyovarian metabolic syndrome, I think is the right term. I'm gonna have to look at it again. PMOS. Um, it's it really does now highlight that and gives recognition that this is actually a whole body systemic problem. And by recognizing that, now we can actually address how these women are assessed, how they're treated, and the treatment options available to them, and hopefully opens the door for better research and better care down the road.
Thank you for that and for taking the time. We haven't talked about that yet on this podcast, and I really appreciate because like you said, the it's all connected.
It
Can
is.
you talk about the treatment options that you, if we can revisit that you had or that you did in your time, but also the differences now? What have you learned, and what are you also adding when you message this to the online world?
Are we talking more like menopause
Yeah,
treatment
yeah,
and
more
stuff? Yeah.
menopause. Like,
Or
what
this,
was available for you, like when you went
right.
through, and then what have you
Okay.
learned?
Yeah, sure. So when I had my hysterectomy, I wasn't offered anything. And I wasn't offered anything based on the premise that I had my ovaries and that my ovaries were still going to work properly and give me the hormones that I needed as a young woman in her 30s, and that there shouldn't be any hormonal issues. So I was offered zero. And as I went to naturopathic doctors and my own doctors and gynecologists, I would go with my symptoms. And the only thing that I was being offered was an antidepressant, and maybe some oxybutynin for the bladder spasms. That was it. No one really even bothered to bring up any type of, investigation on whether it could be hormonal at all. So I wasn't offered a thing. When I started to educate myself, I started to realize that this is a hormonal thing. And I was actually even starting to get hot flashes, and I was in my late 30s. So I'm like, this feels like menopause, and I'm like, as I'm soaking up the information and learning about it, I'm like, I I need to talk to my doctor about this. And my doctor kind of blew me off a couple of times, about HRTs, telling me HRTs like causes cancer and all of this stuff. And at that point, I really hadn't honed in on the WHI study and the new information that's out, which I'm very well aware of now that that's all changed. But it wasn't until I was 44. So I'm 46 on Saturday, actually, this week. But when I was about 44 was when I decided that I really needed to put my foot down and start looking at getting some treatment because I was really struggling with symptoms. It took a couple of doctor visits, but I finally was able to be like, hey, I need something. I'm having hot flashes. It's affecting my sleep. My mood is affected. I have brain fog. Like, there's all kinds of stuff happening. And at first, my doctor was like, well, you're too young for perimenopause. And I said, well, not when I've had a hysterectomy, more than 10 years ago. And he had actually even sort of forgot that I had had that hysterectomy. I had to remind him that I had this hysterectomy. He said, well, if you got hot flashes or whatever, I'll give you something for it. And initially, he tried to give me a very old version of hormone replacement therapy, which I am thankful that I was educated enough to know that that was not really appropriate for me. Um,
Hmm.
so he
Wow.
did switch that for me to something that was more appropriate and more body identical, that would be tolerated better. And I've been on that for the last 2.5 years. And then I did have to go back to him to try and get some vaginal estrogen because I knew, I mean, I'm a firm believer that any woman over 40 just needs to start using it anyways. It's going to protect your urinary tract, it's going to protect your vagina. It's going to be like, I feel that that's just not even something that needs a prescription, but that's my opinion. Um, but I had to go back to him to get some vaginal estrogen cream, and he's like, "Nope, you have to come off of your systemic before I give you that." And I'm like, "That makes no sense. This is very low dose. It doesn't go systemic in the body, at least not the cream. There's other formulations that have more systemic effects, like the Femring, but the cream does not. And my systemic estrogen wasn't doing enough to deal with the pelvic symptoms. So that was a fight. He would not give me the prescription for it, even though we know that we can do both. Um, and I ended up having to go to a private provider in Canada to get a vaginal estrogen
Yeah.
formulation. Hmm.
That is so many obstacles. And again, you're doing this as someone who's trained in it. Like you're an RN. Like you
Like,
know this layout and you are still just
Yeah.
having such a struggle. And again,
I
the
know the system, I know
language.
how to navigate the system, but like the system itself was even working against me.
Hmm.
A lot
Yeah.
of
And
gatekeeping.
that's powerful to learn. And it's also very motivating and inspiring as to why you need to be out there. Because, I mean, there are people either just apathetic or just willingly neglectful. I mean, there is that just don't care. And
Or they're really
it's
suffering and they don't even really know where to go, right? I'm
that,
meeting,
yeah, I meant from the medical side, but yes, yeah,
oh,
the
yeah, from
patient
the medical
side.
side. Oh, for sure. The medical side is, there's so much gatekeeping on the medical side. There's so many medical providers that are not caught up to the current research. The ones that are close to retirement, they just don't care. Um, they're, as you said, they're apathetic. And there's the whole medical misogyny still exists too. A lot of women are just seen as whining. Still being told it's part of aging. I had a client that I work with. Her doctor, before he retired, she tried to get even just like vaginal estrogen, and her physician said to her, "Well, I can't help you out with that because they don't make Viagra for women."
Wow.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, he said, yeah,
Oh, that's a see, and that's strange. I mean, that is a weird, yeah.
yeah,
It's insulting how ignorant, neglectful, and dismissive it is.
yeah.
Um,
And she was really struggling with painful insertion and dryness, and she didn't want to be intimate with her husband because
right,
it was going to hurt.
right.
And he was just like, well, just have a glass of wine and put up with it because they don't make Viagra for women. Yikes.
Mm-mm. Well, like what? So, in terms of options, when someone starts this journey, there is so much misinformation out there, and then there's also valid concerns. So there's particularly when we look at um, the quote Western medication, and then also looking at homeopathic, more natural. Talk about like how you have walked through this journey. I know that you talk a lot about your personal fitness, how exercise is important. Talk about what options women might have when they start their menopause journey.
Absolutely. There's so many options, but it's always going to boil down to like basics. So if you feel like you want to go the route of hormone replacement therapy, if it is appropriate for you, there are a small subsect of women who it's not appropriate for. If you've had a history yourself of breast cancer, so not necessarily a family history, that doesn't necessarily exclude you anymore. It's just your own personal history of either breast or ovarian cancer. If you have like active heart, cardiovascular disease, untreated high blood pressure, liver issues, um, or like if you think you're pregnant, which for most people in menopause, that's not an issue. But like there's like that small subsect of women that it's not appropriate for. The majority of women are decent candidates for HRT, especially within the first 10 years of the last menstrual period. So, in the perimenopausal period, and then that first 10 years after you've stopped having your period, that is like the best time to start HRT.
Okay.
So, definitely getting up to speed with that, getting some education around that. There's still a lot of fear around cancer risk with HRT. A lot of that has been debunked. We know that women who've had hysterectomies don't need progesterone. If you don't have a uterus, you really don't need progesterone. And those studies actually indicate that estrogen alone therapy decreases that cancer risk by 22%. So, If you do have a uterus, though, you must be on a progesterone to protect the uterine lining. That being said, HRT is one modality, especially if you have symptoms that you're really struggling with. Does HRT cure all the symptoms? No. Um, it is definitely supportive with some other symptoms too. So a lot of women, talk about the weight gain and all of that. It doesn't help you lose weight, but it helps your body manage the symptoms so that you actually can do the workout.
Okay.
So it helps with that fatigue because it's going to help your sleep, right? If you're exhausted, you're not going to work out. But if you're on HRT and your sleep is improving, then you're going to have the energy to actually do that workout, right? So it's kind of like complementary for some symptoms and actually helps treat others. So you always want to, though, combine your hormone replacement therapy with lifestyle changes as well. So you want to be looking at what's my nutrition like right now. You want to be making adjustments in your nutrition. Our nutritional needs change as we go into perimenopause. We often require more protein, more fiber. Um, and a lot of women tend to lower the amount of calories that they're eating because they're afraid of the weight gain. When in reality, they should actually be eating to keep up their metabolism and their muscle mass so that they are actually able to lose the weight, right? So the body doesn't go into that starvation mode or stress mode where it hangs on to fat. So it sounds counterintuitive, but you actually probably should be eating more in perimenopause, just more of the right macronutrients, right? Focusing on protein and fiber. Um, you definitely want to be moving your body. And for some women, this is when they just pick up weights for the very first time. They may have been avid runners or walkers, swimmers, but never really picked up strength training. All of that other stuff is fantastic. It's great for heart health, great for our bodies in general to walk, run, whatever cardio you were doing. But strength training is what is going to help you maintain that muscle mass and bone mass, which are two things that we lose with aging. And going into menopause, that just accelerates because the estrogen has left the building. Um, and estrogen, we know, helps rebuild bone tissue. So if we don't have that on board and we're not strength training to help build that bone and muscle mass, we're going to lose that and be more at risk for things like osteoporosis. So we want to look at movement, intentional type of strength training. Really, you only need 2 to 3 times a week. That's perfect. You want to look at stress reduction, ways to manage that stress throughout your day, making sure that you're adding in things that bring you joy. Um, Definitely, you want to look at your sleep. What's your sleep routine like? That might need some adjustment so that you are getting 7 hours of sleep at night, that you are prioritizing sleep hygiene, and that you have conditions around you that is going to help with sleep quality. And those are sort of the major like lifestyle factors we look at. Of course, there's other things that can come up, right? There could be relationship issues that change that might need attention. Mental health might get in the way that might need some attention. Even like, from a spiritual context, I mean, you understand those pieces. So that changes for some people. Some women even experience re traumatization in menopause just with that hormonal shift, um, and sort of try to work through those types of things too. So there's other factors that tend to come up. We are the sandwich generation. So we have like kids that are, teenagers, young adults still in the house driving you crazy. And then you've got aging parents on the other side of the spectrum. So like it's definitely a very involved time, both externally and internally, and
Yes.
just being able to manage all of those things. So I really do teach the importance of self care during this time. Um, and then, of course, if you choose not to do hormone replacement therapy and, um, maybe go more of a natural route, working maybe with a naturopath, homeopathic therapies. I mean, I'll tell you right now, there's some fantastic naturopath doctors out there that really do understand menopause and actually are menopause certified through the Menopause Society. They can help you from those aspects as far as symptom management. But these other things that I'm talking about, the stress management, the sleep, all of that, that all still needs to be addressed, whether you choose to do HRT or not, and
Hmm.
probably need to be even more emphasized if you are going to not choose to use HRT, really focusing on those lifestyle changes.
Absolutely. And it's so people, particularly women, hear strength training and they think bulk and they think, and that's not really what you're talking about. You're
Yeah, our
literally
body can't do that anyways.
it's so hard. Yes.
Like
And
all these women train, like women who are bulked up that are doing all this heavy lifting, a lot of them are on like massive amounts of like peptides, and some of them even take steroids. And like our bodies naturally just can't bulk up like that. You have to be
yeah.
working out like 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, and eating so much food, like literally eating what I would probably eat in 3 days. They're eating in a day, right? We just can't do it. Our bodies can't do it.
No. No, and it's like you said, there's whatever path you go, there are just things that you need to address, and things that are in your control too, is what
Yes.
I'm hearing.
Yes.
And things that should empower you to support your own health. I want to kind of shift into you writing your book. Talk about the quote, for dummies book series, people coming and talking to you. I know you said you started to build a name for yourself with local clinics and medical uh, communities. What has this book series been like that, or this book writing? What has that been like?
It was actually a surprise. I was actually approached by Wiley to write it.
Wow.
And I guess they had some editors that have been following me for a while. And we know like what the For Dummies series is like, right? They are they really cater to people who just want the basics information. They don't need all of the lingo, and they want the reading material to be picked up, and the person who's never heard about it can read it and understand it. And that's how I teach. That's how I teach online. That's how I teach like when I do workshops and work with one to one with clients. Just meeting people where they're at. And in writing Menopause for Dummies, I feel like there really isn't anything out there like that. I um, I have read so many books about menopause and estrogen, and like, and for me they're great because I understand the material, but I could never take that book and give it to my 60 something year old mother and her
Right.
understand a lot of it,
Right.
right? Even some of the ones that are more popular out there, I've read them, and it's like this is all great, but there's still a lot of like clinical, really clinical information in there that really is just redundant to the layperson. So my focus on this particular book and the way I'm writing it is to give you all the info, give the reader all the information that they need to feel empowered, that they know what's going on with their body. So,
Right.
like, tell them in layman's terms what's happening with your body, what your treatment options are, and from both a more traditional standpoint and holistic standpoint, what you need to focus on, what are some warning signs, some tips, ways to work through certain things, whether it's symptoms or treatment or side effects or whatever. I even have a like I'm even probably I've got a portion in there that might be about GLP-1s because that's a big thing that's coming up now in the menopause space is the use of GLP-1s in menopausal women. Um, we're going to talk about nutrition in a simple way. There's going to be no rules about nutrition in there. Just, these are the basics that you need to understand. Um, Same with fitness. These are some basic things that you need to, understand, but also move in a way that feels good. Um, and then just some of the other external factors, all the lifestyle factors that I talked about briefly here, sleep and stress
Mhm.
reduction. And but there's even going to be, and I really made this clear when I did my author proposal, was that I wanted to have a section in there that the woman can take the book and give it to her husband and say, read this chapter.
Right.
So that partners can understand how to support their partner going through menopause.
Or
Because,
even, yeah, sorry.
no,
I
it's
was just
okay.
thinking you could like start a study group on it. Like you could
Yeah,
start a little book
exactly, right?
club
The,
and
st-
and
the
do that.
statistics for relationships breaking down at this point in life is very high.
Yeah, that too.
So, and a lot of it is probably misunderstanding. She's just
Hmm.
not putting up with things anymore. She's tired. She's ragey. He's probably going through his own little midlife crisis and like the communication breaks down. So it's very it was really important for me to have that piece, in there somewhere as well, so that both people feel supported having this book there, right? It's not going to be just about her, but also like, hey, honey, I want you to read
Yeah.
this chapter. Um, yeah. So those are
Or
basically the elements that are going to be in there, and like I said, it's going to be designed for an easy read and you know help women pick it up and go to any chapter, and if she's struggling with that one day she can pick it up almost like a manual. It's
right,
going to be like a menopause manual.
right.
um yeah.
I'm so excited for you. That
Thank
is
you.
excellent news for so many. And you're absolutely right. The relationship shift, because as we stated, I mean, hormones are everything, and you evolve, you change. And like you said, uh, a woman has changed. She's not going to put up with the same stuff that she used to. That could be at work, that could be at home, that could be with her kids. Um, I know I've heard it, in the last few years with some of my friends whose moms were kind of one of the more helpful, like, oh, I'll be there for, I'll do everything for you kind, and then went through menopause and you're on your own.
You're on your own. Yeah, I'm not
I'm
doing
in,
that.
I'm in Rome. I'm on a cruise now. Like, bye.
Yeah, priorities shift, and you get up one morning, you just like, I don't feel like doing that today. Like, it's just, I'm not doing it.
And thank God for it. And there's so many. I would love to have you back to do a deeper dive on like even like the history of menopause information, what we've known over time, um, not only in the quote, Western United States, Canada, but just what did other cultures do? Menopause isn't new to
And even
2026.
what we still do,
Right.
there's just so many, like, menopause affects so many different cultures differently.
Mm,
For example, I come from a Caribbean background. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. We just go through it. You might see your aunt in the corner going like this, that she's hot, but she's not going to tell you that it's like hot flashes or menopause because she probably doesn't even know what's going on either. We know that, blacks and African Americans don't seek treatment because of history of, medical racism and all of that, right? So, and then we know that women in Japan like openly, lovingly like celebrate it. And they have a completely different experience with menopause. And guess what? Their symptoms are like almost nil, even though they experience more osteoporosis because of the lack of calcium in their diets. But they have a high soy diet. So their symptoms are not as bad, and last a lot less, time than say the black woman who's like 10 years and the Japanese woman's like 2 to 3. So
Wow.
it's very different for so many different cultures, different around the world, how they perceive it, what it's like. For some it's taboo, for some it's
Hmm.
celebrated. We know whales go through it.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's only 4 species in the world that actually go through menopause. Um, Humans and whales. I think elephants is another one, but yeah, it's it's wild. There's just so much more that you can, you know, discuss about menopause and so many different topics. It's a topic that you probably could have me here for 3 hours and we wouldn't
Well,
be
yeah.
done.
No,
Yeah,
I would love, yeah, please come back. But in the
absolutely.
meantime, can you tell folks how they can follow you and where they can learn more about you?
Absolutely. So, my primary presence is on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at Meno Health Nurse, Meno Health Health Nurse. It's all one word. So you can find me there and follow. And then from there, I have a link tree that is set up to explore my website. That's where I've got lots of free downloads that anyone can just go in, download information. I've got some menopause guides in there, some nutrition guides in there. Um, I'm always refreshing those guides, so there's always something new in there to pull from. You can also take a look at like my coaching packages and workshops and stuff. If I've got anything going on, sometimes I do have virtual ones that are happening that you can join. And then I also have a Substack, so I think the link to my Substack is also in my link tree. You can click on that and read some blog posts that I put in there once in a while. Just some information. Again, I do a lot of that education piece. A lot of it is available for free. And I just think that's the way to do it in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, to offer that type of education for just the woman that's snooping around and looking and just looking for somewhere to start. Um, so definitely you can follow me there, and then you can check out my website from there, and there's stuff to download.
Yeah. Ah, well, you are just an angel providing a public good and service. Thank you so much for all that you have done. I know that you have certainly suffered and been lost or alone in this. And thank you for doing the work that you needed to do to heal yourself so that you can continue being a healer for others. That is vital. And earlier you mentioned it was your birthday. So happy birthday a few days ago. We were kind of deep in the conversation, so I
Yeah,
didn't want to
yeah,
derail it, but
yeah.
happy birthday.
Thank
And
you. Saturday, so
oh,
it's on. It's coming.
well,
Great. Thank you so
Amanda,
much.
thank you for giving me your time. I do hope, like I said, that you come back. And to my listeners, now that you know that you might be coming back, please drop your comments and questions for this particular video so that we can roll those into the next conversation.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I look forward to that. That would be great
so
if they answer some
for sure,
questions.
it'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and folks, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. You know the drill. This has been another episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee Larson, and until next time, see ya.
Bye.